Well, our investigative reporting continues in Maine after we reported on suspected Medicaid fraud with Gateway Community Services. The chair of the Oversight Committee praising our reporting, but for weeks we could not get a comment from Governor Janet Mills. Federal officials have now visited Gateway, and last week the governor says she supports an investigation.
The Somali Maine medical fraud is a massive heist that's just turning America into an external ATM machine for international fraud. Hundreds of millions of tax dollars are being siphoned through ghost offices and wired overseas while the system does nothing to stop it.
And another twist, so-called ghost businesses.
This building right behind me has 22 different home and community-based healthcare companies registered in the building. It's only 4 floors. I walked in there yesterday trying to find a number of them. Many of them appear to be just window fronts, door fronts, with nobody behind.
This is just a shocking reality of an industrial-scale fraud scheme that's bleeding our country dry. You know, it's funny how the biggest scandals usually start with one person just paying attention. We're told to trust the experts and trust the system.
Hi, Nicole. Well, we're finding the same patterns here in Maine that we did find in Minnesota. We were tipped off that it's actually happening here in Portland and in Lewiston, where we are now, that there's these zombie offices, clusters of home healthcare businesses in the same location, which is potentially a red flag for fraud.
But in Portland, Maine, it took a regular old little guy just trying to manage his building, and he popped up and asked one question the bureaucrats apparently couldn't be bothered with. What the hell is going on in my building? Yeah, that's what he asked. This landlord, Ron Nivens, I may be pronouncing his name wrong, but he noticed something weird. He had 22 different home healthcare companies registered to his address.
We're here in Portland, Maine, at an office building, nondescript office building. We found of the businesses that are registered in here, of the 20-something businesses, 10 of them are home healthcare businesses. We're gonna go take a look. As you can see, Prestige Home Care, Bright Star Home Care, Atlantic Community Support, FiveStar's Home Health Care, Prime Home Care, LLC. They're all home healthcares. Healthcare, 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 home healthcare. I didn't even know what home healthcare was. Okay.
Now think about that for a second. 22? At one point, these agencies made up half of his entire tenant list. On paper, it looks like a booming healthcare hub, right? The centerpiece of care and compassion. But when Ron walked the halls, do you know what he found? Absolutely nothing. But y'all know what to do. Subscribe and comment on whether or not you're with me on this.
Now, building owner Ron Nivens, he agreed to speak with us. He says he doesn't want to lose tenants by talking publicly, but this, to him, is an issue of right versus wrong. Do you think these businesses are actually legit businesses?
Some, yes, but some I highly question. One guy I see coming and going, and the rest of them I never see unless only when they pay their rent, if I'm here when they pay their rent.
Now these ghost offices, as they're commonly called, were empty. Every single day. No nurses, no patients, no staff equipment, just rows of doors with fancy names up. And yet these ghost companies were allegedly pulling in millions of dollars in medical funds. Now ask yourself, how does the state government send millions of taxpayer dollars to a building where nobody actually works?
One of the so-called providers, FiveStar Home Healthcare, overbilled Maine. A Maine state audit determined they overbilled MaineCare by nearly $400,000. That's according to documents obtained by the Maine Wire. And then the owner just abandoned the office.
Yeah, well, I call it the empty suite of economy. If no one is working there and no one to provide care, where is their money going? Well, the state finally decided to do a little audit themselves, and that's when the house of cards did not just fall, it vanished. The state audited one company in particular. It's called FiveStar Home Healthcare. They found $400,000 in overbillings almost immediately, and when they asked for the paperwork to back up their claims, silence. No documents, no records, just a $400,000 oopsie on the taxpayer's dime.
Ultimately, this is an issue of right versus wrong. It's not a blue versus red issue, and he wants more awareness on this issue.
But here's the best part, and by best I mean almost infuriating. As soon as the heat turned up, the owner of FiveStar just disappeared. The landlord couldn't even reach him for 6 months. No calls, no texts, no return address. The office was abandoned, the bills were unpaid, and the owner was gone. And this is the accountability we were promised. In other words, you can just loot the entire system for hundreds of thousands of dollars and then just go ghost of the entire state? If you think this is just a Maine problem, think again. This is a playbook. The investigators found the exact same patterns in Minnesota. It's like a franchise for fraud. You set up a cluster of agencies, then you overbill the government for the services that never happen. And soon as the auditor knocks on the door, you shut it down and move to the next state. It's a red flag, the size of a country, yet it keeps happening. Why, you may ask? Because the people in charge of oversight are more interested in expanding these programs than they are in just making sure that they actually work. They want to brag about the billions they invest in healthcare. They'll do the talk but won't walk the walk about the millions that are being siphoned off by criminals using the system as their personal ATM. Now here's the part where it gets truly ugly. Where does the money go once it leaves the government's hands? Investigators notice that these healthcare agencies are almost located right next door to international money transfer businesses. Conveniently, huh? Specifically, a service called, and it's hard for me to pronounce this, but I'm gonna try, y'all. Dahabshiil, the official wiring service for the Central Bank of Somalia. The alleged pipeline is simple, effective, and devastating. First, you overbill the U.S. Medicaid program for fake services. Then you collect the taxpayer-funded checks. Finally, you wire the money overseas immediately. We're not just talking about a few $1,000s here. Reporters covering this story believes that the fraud in Maine alone could be in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
There's been no consequences, no investigation, no resolution to what happened with FiveStar's home health care. And that, I think, is something, that's a story that we see play out time and time again.
You've been reporting on this for quite a long time here in Maine. How widespread do you think this issue is here?
Hundreds of millions of dollars, easily. It's, you know, you look at just where we're standing right now, there are probably a dozen home health care agencies registered here. We can see Ladna Home Health Care down there. That's a $2 million home health care agency. You can see it's located right next to 2 money wiring services. Right next to it, you have Dahabshiil. The Dahabshiil is the official money wiring service of the Central Bank of Somalia.
You don't know what's going on behind the scenes, you know.
Does it bother you?
Well, it ticks me off if they're screwing the state of Maine, and because that's my tax money, you know. You add up what's going on all over the state of Maine, it's probably millions and millions of dollars of fraud and abuse.
At the end of the day, this is not just a budget issue. This is a normal failure. Every dollar that gets wired to Somalia or tucked away in a fraudster's pocket is a dollar that's not going to a senior who needs home care or a child with a disability. The people who scream the loudest about saving these programs are the ones presiding over their collapse. They built a system that's so bloated and so unmonitored that it becomes a magnet for international fraud. When the fraud is this visible, this obvious, and this systematic, you have to ask yourself, who is actually responsible for the solution? Because right now, the only person doing the oversight seems to be a curious landlord in Maine. This system is broken, folks, and you're the ones who's paying the repairs while the thieves are already halfway across the world. So go up top right now and click on either video you see and let us continue. See you there.